Um, Michelle alluded to this in the introduction. We're living in a particular time that is, in some ways, seems different, but may in fact not actually be very different at all. Yesterday, I'm sure some of you, and maybe not all of you, went on the New York Times website or whatever, media website, you tend to frequent, and you saw a video of a police officer shooting a black man in the back, gunning him down, and then doing what appears to be planting evidence, on him to justify what appeared to be a cold-blooded murder. And I got a note. I was on the plane coming here, and I was getting ready to board, and I got a note from my politics editor, and he said, "Listen, I know you think about this stuff all the time. You care about this so much. There's so many people paying attention. This would be a good time for you to write something." And I sat down and I tried to write, and it just felt like cheating because I realized I was just saying the same thing over and over and over again. The fact of the matter is, when we have one of these incidents come up, we have this hyper-micro focus on the incident. And we think about the police officer and how awful the police officer was and what police officer did in that act. And I don't really have a beef with that. I'm not here to defend a police officer who shoots a man in the back. But we had a case a few weeks ago. There's a man in Atlanta who was leaping off of his balcony. He was having some sort of mental issues, and he was stark naked, and he was shot down too. I just came from Madison, Wisconsin, and the students up there were all afire for a young man up there who had gotten high on mushrooms and was chasing a car, and somebody called the cops, and somehow he ended up dead too. I come from New York City, where over the summer we had Eric Garner, who was out on the street selling cigarettes, and somehow he ended up dead too. I think at some point, it's good to pause for a second, to even put the outrage and anger on pause for a second, and just back up a little bit and see if we can connect the dots. And one of the things I want to suggest to you is that there's a line running through the last 30 or 40 years in terms of how we deal with what should be social service in our cities. And what we have decided is that we will cut back on social service and we will send the police in to deal with every single issue. So this guy is like missing a taillight, and then a child support warrant comes up on him. We decide the way to deal with that is to send somebody in who has been authorized by the state to kill, to use as much force as he deems necessary. We have a gentleman who's having a mental health issue, and our way of responding to that is to send somebody in who is authorized to kill in the name of the state. We have somebody having a drug issue, and our response to that is to send in somebody who we've authorized to kill, to use as much force as he deems necessary. And if you know anything about the jurisprudence of this country, it's very, very hard to, first of all, get a police officer to actually lose his job through the use of force, much less be convicted of anything. We have pretty much given carte blanche to officers to use as much force as necessary.
You use an interesting word, and before I ask this question, I just want to, you ask the audience to think about two things, given that we've all seen, or most of us have probably seen this video. I wonder if we should be thinking about something else also. With the videos that we've seen in the death of Walter Scott and the death of Eric Garner and the death of Tamir Rice are potentially an accessory to justice, but they also mean that we see Black life extinguished on a regular basis. And that's something that we've gotten used to. And, I said this earlier on social media that my father's generation and his father's generation were scarred by the memory of seeing Black lives extinguished. And they bore those scars, and those who saw it bore those scars in a special way,
right,
as opposed to those who just heard tell of it. We all see it now,
right,
and our children see it too, and I wonder if you worry about that.
I worry a great deal about it. I mean, it's always the possibility of, and I was wondering, again, it was one of the reasons why I wrote the piece the way it did. People become like names to you, and then they kind of get dehumanized, and you lose like all of the texture that makes a human being, as opposed to just some Black dude who's running and then he just gets shot. if we forget that these people are human beings, I think we lose something. We almost surrender to the crime in a particular way. I always have just a weird reaction to these sorts of things. I watch it and I have like this kind of shell that comes over me where I don't quite process it completely. I was way more emotional reading that tonight than I was when I was actually writing it. I actually wasn't that emotional when I was writing it. And I suspect that maybe other black people do the same sort of thing, where you put it in some sort of box. And maybe we get used to putting things like that into boxes, because we can't necessarily cope in the moment with them. But it comes out, it kind of seeps out of you. And so, yeah, I do worry about that, and I worry about the normalization of that kind of brutality. It's why I'm, I guess, in part a little suspicious of how much cameras will ultimately help. I would much rather us think more about when we're deploying force and why.
So cameras are less necessary.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm not against cameras, but I just feel like it's kind of a Band-Aid,